lot of old heads might not remember the street etiquette, out of New York. They were from the Bronx, the Brooklyn Circus. That's a clothing brand by my man Ouija in Brooklyn as well. These were cats who were they kind of changed the tone of the Black aesthetic. And for me, as a Black man from New York, living in the South, who still maintained a certain aesthetic that revolved around the art scenes in New York and a lot of hot spots around the country and world for that matter. I looked at those guys as inspiration. You know what I mean? Like whatever they were doing spoke to me. So I wanted to kind of reflect that energy when people saw my work, and that made me come up with the style, creativity, and soul aspect of my business. I wanted people to think of those three things. If they see anything going out in the universe from me and my company, it needs to reflect any one of those three things that I mentioned. And if it doesn't, then that's not a part of my brand. That's not what I want to do,
This is the G Shit Podcast, where we focus on family, friends, finances, freedom, and our future, and everything else. This is the G Shit Podcast. We are live and we got a special guest, Chris Charles. Let's intro this thing and get right to it. This is the G Shit Podcast.
No talk back. You see me blink yet?
You already know what it is. This is the G Shit Podcast, where we focus on family, friends, finances, freedom, and our future, and everything else. I can't be more happy today than to join you all with Chris Charles. Who is he? We're about to get into it. But he is a Jamaican-American multidisciplinary everything. He does everything. We're going to really get into it. Chris, thank you so much for joining. I am so happy that you were willing to join this platform and give the audience an opportunity to get to know you a little more.
Hey, man, it's a pleasure, man. I appreciate you inviting me onto the joint, man. It's, we've been rocking for a long time, so I'm so glad to see what you're doing. I'm seeing the progress and the energy you're putting out, dropping that knowledge. So it's an honor to be here, brother. I appreciate you, man. Thank you for having me.
Likewise. And so I've known Chris for a while. We worked in different capacities. Actually, the picture right here, my wife and I behind me, he snapped that photo. Actually, if we're being real here, he was also there for our wedding. He was able to capture that. And I've had an opportunity to work with him as a creative. What I want to talk about with you, man, is honestly like the entrepreneurial aspect of what you do, because you talk about, you've seen my growth. When we first met, it was when we did that first initial engagement shoot, it was 2013. I believe, wow. Yep, because the wedding was 2014, so that was 2013.
10 years, wow.
A lot has changed since then.
Yeah,
not just crazy. Because it's 10 years, but you as a business person, you as an artist, like what I know you to be now is not necessarily what I knew you to be then. So I really would like to get into that. But before we get into that, like I know you're Jamaican American. Were you born in America? Were you born in Jamaica? Give me a little bit more information
for sure.
On the background.
For sure, man. Well, actually, I'm born in Brooklyn, baby. You know what I mean? But, the beautiful thing about New York and Brooklyn is that it's such a melting pot of Caribbean culture. And even when I was, popped up on the scene in Brooklyn, it was, I had Italian neighbors, I had Irish neighbors, I had Haitian neighbors, Panamanian, Puerto Rican, you know what I mean? So it was a huge melting pot of so many different cultures living on one block. So my mother's Jamaican, my dad actually was born in North Carolina, in Shelby, North Carolina, which I didn't know until like a few years ago.
Shout out to Shelby, just cause we don't never hear about a town like Shelby.
Bruh, I didn't even know what Shelby was, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, I saw his records, man, in Shelby, North Carolina. So it's full circle. Like I'm back here, this is my home now, so it's love.
Wow. Like I know you as an artist, but let's talk about before you became a full-time artist, like professional artist. I know you have a background in the military. Like what were you doing before even the military? What led you to the military?
Yeah, man. Out of high school, I went to school. I tried college twice before I went into the military. The first time I failed miserably. I got a partial scholarship to play football at Kentucky Wesleyan College in Owensboro, Kentucky. Little D3 school. I got a partial ride, and that
What
was my first
position?
time. Wide receiver. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I played all around back. I mostly wide receiver, but I'd be a blocking back, and I played strong safety because I was kind of strong for my size. You know what I mean? They would sleep on me, then I would bring that pain. But yeah. So I played football and didn't make it a year, bro. I just was the culture shock of being in the South after growing up in New York and kind of, having to deal with certain things as far as, racial tension and all of that. So anyway, after a year, I went back home and went back to school for architectural engineering. So that's where I wound up getting my degree in architectural engineering before the military.
So were you always into the arts? Like even like as a young one, like were you painting, drawing? Did you have any experience at a high level, especially I guess in a city like New York? Did you participate in any competitions or anything like that growing up?
Yeah, man, I was actually, art was kind of just second nature to me, be it sketching, drawing cars, and a lot of young Black boys and boys in general love comic books. So I would always, draw comic book figures and experiment with painting. And so yeah, art was a huge part of my life. And just, the cultural scene in New York at the time and pretty much forever, you're gonna be surrounded by art, you're gonna be inspired by it. So for me, it was I want to say it was the second or third grade I had did a painting, and it wound up getting submitted to this contest where they would display elementary school kids artwork at the Brooklyn Museum of Art, and my painting got selected. You know what I mean? So that was my first experience, and then once again I didn't know how important and impactful that was to my parents. Obviously, they were super proud, but I was like, I don't know what's going on. I'm a kid in the second, third grade. You know what I mean? But yeah, art has always been a big part of my life, man. Even just like with my pops and photography, and my parents definitely encouraged me to. My dad had the old school 8mm film camera joint, and that's what he would use to document family events, and then eventually graduated to the Betamax. A video camera, the big joint, then it shrunk down a little bit. So it's like, it's funny because I've seen like the evolution of of technology while being involved with it and using it actively. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, art has been a big part of my life from day one.
Yeah, I like hearing that, because I think, so art is also about like imagination. And so when you're an artist and you grow up in a household, especially at that time where I'm guessing here, I don't know if that was average for a Black family to have someone in a household who had that sort of technology to capture those moments. I don't know if that was a regular thing. If I know even myself, I didn't have that in the household growing up, and access to instruments and things like that was a limitation too, to some degree. Like I like hearing that was embedded within the home, and it was, along with comics and other things, it really gave you a playground to really like dive in and figure out like what you were actually drawn to, like a moth to a flame, if you will.
Yeah, facts, man. I mean, a lot of my homies, like a lot of my best friends, we all obviously were into the same things, and it was a combination of like kind of nerding out over comic books and X-Men and G.I. Joe.
What were some of the comics back then?
Like, definitely. I was a G.I. Joe head from a kid, and that kind of was. It's kind of a funny segue into my military service.
Right,
I love G.I.
propaganda
Joe.
got you.
Bruh, it got a lot of people, man. It got a lot of people. I'm telling you, man. They knew what they were doing. Like now in hindsight, I'm like, wow, they were really programming us to get into that mindset. But also, my whole family was a military family. My dad was a Marine. He had 5 brothers. They were all at some way affiliated with the military, Air Force, you know what I'm saying? So it was something that I just kind of gravitated towards anyway. Like I liked wearing a uniform. I liked being fresh. I was a Boy Scout. So that also, like I was the Boy Scout that wore the Boy Scout uniform top with some Army fatigues on the bottom. That's how so anyway, I think for me, man, like the fact that a lot of my peers and my friends had parents who, fortunately they worked in the medical field or they worked at the same hospital or in the same area, and they had access, and they were all kind of from similar backgrounds, so that's where like music came in as well. A lot of my friends were from the islands, be it Haiti or Jamaica or Trinidad. So sound system culture, sound clashes in Brooklyn, block parties where you got the giant speakers, and kind of blossoming in the golden era of hip hop in New York was a big part of my life, at that time. And that I think also influenced like my aesthetic and how I look at art and how I appreciate how it all matters. You know what I'm saying? So yeah.
That's very nice to hear. Like just like you said, your aesthetic, I think, does have a signature look to it. Like, and so, you know, hearing some of that influences is nice to hear. Like when we talk about G.I. Joes and then you went to art. So why aren't you building buildings is my question. Like,
yeah, so it's just a good segue, man. So for one, college was expensive and I wasn't that good in math. So I had to, you know, me and my family had to front the bill for my degree and going to school for architecture. And honestly, I always wanted to be in the military, always wanted to be in whatever, you know, most like the Army was kind of what I gravitated towards. My dad came up in the Marine Corps in the 50s, crazy racist, you know what I'm saying? And that really affected him to where he was like, if you're going to join the military, I support that, but do not join the Marines. Yeah, wow. This is no shade to any Marines now. Contemporarily, things have changed a lot, but that made it easy for me. I didn't want to join the Air Force. You know, it wasn't hard enough. That's how I looked at it. And I'm just saying, you know what I'm saying? And look, I mean, being an athlete, you know what it is, man. I played football, baseball, I wrestled, I played basketball, and I did martial arts as a kid. This was like my whole childhood was, you know, revolved around physical activity and being in shape and like challenging your body and mind. So the Army was it. You know what I mean? That was a good balance between what I thought the Air Force was and what my pops was telling me about the Marine Corps.
I just got to share this because this is my uncle, and he's actually a retired 4-star general.
Yeah.
In the Air Force. So maybe he can get his hands dirty over there. I'm gonna have to talk to him about that next time I see him.
Yeah, that's love. That's dope, man. Yeah, it's funny because all the rest of my family were in the Air Force. I got 3 uncles that was in the Air Force. My brother was in the Army, but my uncles, they all retired. You know what I'm saying? And it actually, my uncle, I went to basic training in Fort Sill, Oklahoma back in 90, telling my age, 93. And my uncle was stationed at the Air Force base right next to, you know, not far from you know, the where I was doing basic training. So he showed up in his dress uniform. You know what I'm saying? It was like a fly situation, and he came out and supported. So I always had, you know, support from the family, you know what I mean, when it came to military service. But I already knew I was going to be in the military. I just enjoyed the whole thing, everything about it.
And so how long did you make a career out of being in the military?
Yeah, I did 12 and a half years in the Army. Yeah.
Why not go for the 20? What made you not go for the 20? I know that's like a big thing when you're in the military, that 20-year mark.
It was a few things, man. Honestly, you know, for one, war will change you, you know what I'm saying? And being in combat and being in conflict zones and seeing people's lives lost and seeing your friends go and then having kids. My daughter was young at the time, you know, and she was barely 2-3 years old when I deployed. I had a good friend, you know, Sergeant Crockett, you know what I mean? He had 22 years in and he was about to retire. He submitted his retirement packet. Everything was good to go until we had to deploy. And he wound up having to deploy. So he went with us. And he didn't make it home.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Wow.
And something clicked, man. Like something after that, and having to be as a leader, you know, I was a sergeant. So I had to, you know, I had a team that I was responsible for. And we had to be able to navigate from one side of a combat area to the next. It's stressful, you know what I'm saying? And my guys did what they had to do, but I've had to really be a lot, you know, from counselor to leader to weapons expert to best friend to asshole leader, so we can get this work done, you know what I mean, to politician, man. And so anyway, whole point is that, I woke up one night at 4:00 in the morning with my cot covered in mosquitoes, you know what I'm saying, and sweating. And I was like, you know what? I think I'm good. I think I've done what I had to do. And I did some hard stuff before that point. You know, before I deployed, I mean, I went to airborne school. So I was jumping out of airplanes. I went to air assault school, rappelling out of helicopters. I was an expert marksman. Went to jump master school, you know, which is a hard school. And I was debating trying out for special forces, and actually tried and wound up breaking my foot. So that was a next. But I mean, you know, it was just a lot of things that I wanted to do to challenge myself while I was in it. I felt like I pretty much did all the things that I wanted to do up to the point where I decided to get out, you know?
I'm already seeing this underlying there's a desire to challenge yourself, which from an entrepreneurial standpoint, we'll get to that, but I'm already seeing some of the connections here with the background leading you to kind of where you are today, because being a sergeant, so I'm curious, 12 years in, I appreciate you sharing why you didn't say go for the 20, if not more. what's your biggest takeaway from that time in the Army?
You know, honestly, it was a big lesson on not only learning the political landscape of the country, you know what I'm saying, as a chess piece, because that's what you are as a soldier, as a politician, you just moving chess pieces around the board. Another thing that really also I took away was it's about money in politics, and a lot of times you have to make a decision to not worry about that as a soldier. And for years I didn't. I just wanted to go do my job and come home. But then my last deployment, another thing that happened was my job was a technical job. I was responsible for providing secure communications across the battlefield, but we also had the equipment to have an internet connection. And in 2003, 2004, in Baghdad, that's kind of a big deal where you can actually say, yo, come, you want to send an email to your family, you want to have a phone call with your wife, I can have people come in and do that.
Right.
So what happened was Kellogg, Brown, and Root wound up getting a big, huge contract to do the same exact thing that me and my team was out here risking our lives to do, except they were getting $150,000 a year as contract, and we was just getting our military pay. And that's when I was like, I see what we're doing here. Why am I here again? You know what I mean? So it was one of those things where I think when it comes to military, you have to make a decision. And are you going to rock with it and get what you can get and go like I did? Or do you believe in the mission and how much of that is going to affect you? You know what I mean? But also when I went into corporate, I also understood that most corporate structure is based around military rank and the chain of command.
All hierarchical and all that good stuff. Yeah.
Instead of a platoon sergeant, you have an operations manager. You know what I'm saying? Instead of a lieutenant colonel running the battalion, you have a executive
director,
officer, director of operations. You know what I'm saying? It's like CEO. It's so when I went into corporate, I started seeing a lot of that translate, you know, as far as just military structure versus corporate.
Facts. Okay. Interesting. So did you do any photography in the Army? Did you do any painting in the Army? Like, you know, like you were in the Army for 12 years. At what point, say post-Army, did you become like, I'm all in on a full-time artist?
Yeah, honestly, well, like to answer your first question, I was, you know, I had a 35 millimeter little disposable camera when I deployed, and I was able to deploy a lot of our drive from Kuwait to Baghdad, you know what I'm saying? And I had like two cameras, which was like 24 rolls, I think, 24 shots of film, and one of the boxes got ruined. It was like the disposable joint. So I have one roll that I was able to salvage that I still have to this day. But yeah, I was documenting as much as I could. Had my family at some point midway through my last deployment for my birthday send me a digital camera, which was new to me because I'd never used one of those before.
What year can we share what year this is? Because
this was
my first digital camera. What year is this?
This was mid 2000 and no, it was either late 2003 or early. Well, no, it was like going into 2004.
So this is like a 10 megapixel.
Yeah, it was like it was the Sony CyberShot joint. That's what I was doing. The Sony CyberShot. It was the little silver joint. It kind of had like a round little. Anyway, yeah, that was actually that lit a fire in me because it wound up allowing me the instant access to the imagery that I was capturing while I was deployed. And it's ironic because I don't have any of those files anymore, but I still got the film pictures that I took. Isn't that crazy? Yeah, right. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, I don't sleep on film. If you into art, like always have prints and tangible evidence of your work. Don't just have it in the cloud somewhere. You got to print your stuff. You know what I mean? But yeah, I always think about it. That's so funny. I don't have any of those digital files I took. But yeah, I was definitely fascinated by photography, even as a kid, man. And for some reason, I just felt the creative bug again while I was deployed. It helped keep me sane. It was like we would work out, you know, that was our big like escape when it came time to downtime in war. You work out, ain't nothing else. What you know, and then we helped build a pool so we can, you know, swim, and it was a decent deployment, but it was still difficult. You feel me? So photography and art specifically was a thing.
It's like a vice almost, would you say?
Yeah, I would say it was just kind of a form of escapism. You know, like understanding the importance of documenting my journey, but also just the physical feeling of satisfaction and dopamine hit whenever I had a camera up to my eyes. You know, that feeling of the click. You know, and seeing that work eventually after it's developed, or even on the digital format in the little 8 megapixel camera that I was using, man, I was amazed and blown away, you know. Thanks. So that definitely had an impact on me. And like I said, it's so crazy that I think about it. I got all those photos that on that old 35 millimeter Kodak disposable camera. I still have those pictures, man. Still got them, man.
That's crazy. So when did you first get paid to take pictures?
Yeah, funny story, man. So I was working, because I had a pretty technical job when I got out. My transition into corporate IT wasn't too difficult. I spent the time, stacking my money, working security on Fort Bragg as an armed security guard, and then transitioned into a corporate job, man. I was working in Cary at a company doing network support.
Okay.
And I, work my way up the chain. I started off in customer care. That's how hungry I was. I started off in customer service, answering phones. And they knew my background. They knew my technical skill sets, but I didn't have all the formal training outside of the Cisco certification. And I tell people who were in the military, as much as civilian companies say how much they respect the military, yeah, they do, but they will take that person with that master's degree before they take you, bro. So get your education up and do what you got to do. So that's what I did. I came in on the bottom floor, worked my way up to engineer 3, over 4 or 5 years. And one of my best homies there was the art director, the creative director of that company. He knew I was doing photography, and I think I had like a Model Mayhem account or something, or I might have been posting on Flickr or posting joints on Facebook or whatever, man. And he knew I had an eye. He appreciated that, and we'd always talk about art and photography and nerd out over camera stuff. And one day he asked me to shoot a wedding with him in Boston.
Wow!
And it was actually the chief software engineer of the particular company I was working at. His brother was getting married in Boston. Massachusetts, not quite Boston. You know what I'm saying? And he was like, "Oh yeah, by the way, I'll cut you a check for $1,500 right now." You know what I'm saying?
Easy work.
Right. I was like, okay, and I love cars, and he had a brand new Audi A4, like a 2007 joint, 2008, and we were going to drive. I was like, yeah, let's go. Let me know when you need me to drive. You know what I mean? So we drove all night to Boston, and we got taken care of. It was a beautiful event. And that's the first time I really looked at my photography and work and even the business aspect of it different. Because for one, that's the first time anybody had cut me a check like that to do this work. And I was so enamored by the work I did. Not even like on some ego stuff. I was just like, wow, I actually did that. I took these pictures, and they're so happy with them.
And the event was what? The event was like,
it was a wedding.
How many people?
It was a big fancy wedding in a country club. There's a movie that this town actually took place in. It was it begins with a W. It's like a really funky name, but it was a movie called A Perfect Storm with George Clooney and a whole bunch of people where these Massachusetts not farmers, but fishermen got caught in this big giant storm at sea. Gloucester, Massachusetts. That's where it was. It's called Gloucester. Gloucester, Massachusetts. But anyway, that's where it was. And so it was like seafood was banging. I had a great my man Chad. He was the art director who put me onto that gig. Great partner to ride up with, and he was just a cool cat. And then when we drove back down, we wound up hanging out in the city for a while. One of his friends was going to St. John's medical school, so we crashed at his apartment and we went and ate Mexican. It was like such an experience, and I was like, I literally just got paid to hang out and take pictures.
Right.
It was like, I was like, okay, well, light bulb moment. Right. And then I'm sorry, go ahead, bro.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, real quick, so I wound up getting laid off, when the tech bubble burst and the real estate market started crashing. A lot of tech companies were kind of
09-ish or
early 09. Yep, early 09, February to be exact. I lost my job, along with several other engineers and people in different departments while they had to downsize a little bit, and that was an eye opener. It was humbling, when you get walked out, when you go to the office to be told that you got let go, you come back to your desk and all your stuff is already packed up, your computer's wiped clean, and you walked out by security. That was not a good feeling because I had never been laid off like that before. So, but yeah, once again, going back to the military stuff, man, I mean, I had time. I had a severance check. They cut me because I was there for several years, and I had my GI Bill. And that's what made me get back into school and get a degree in graphic design while trying to hone my craft, basically. So, yeah.
I appreciate that. And there's a couple of things I just want to highlight because, well, one, the access to the opportunity via a mentor. Was this mentor, did he look like you or did he look different?
Ironically, I never had a mentor. I didn't have a mentor till like later in my career, man. And that was a challenge. I'd mentored like people. I would look at people like virtual mentors, right? Like people I'd never met, artists I'd never met whose work I admired from afar. And thankfully, thanks to the internet, I'd be able to follow them. And there was this one photographer out of Atlanta specifically who focused a lot on music photography. key artwork for projects and artists and rappers. And he worked his name is Zach Aries. I can shout him out. It's fine. He's not, no secret squirrel type of dude. A lot of photographers know his work, and his journey almost mirrored mine, with the exception of the military part. He tried, he failed, and he wound up realizing that he needed to try again until he wins. And he was winning finally. He had these workshops called One Light Workshop. And that's when I realized, well, damn, I could do that too. Because he would break it down like, okay, you don't have to spend thousands of dollars on equipment. You have to learn the technical basics, and then you could buy this $40 thing right here and this $30 thing right here and make it work. And guess what? People won't know the difference. And that's what I did, So he inspired me. I would say he was a mentor, but he doesn't know who I am. He didn't know who I was back then.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah,
So you get that taste of like, oh, I could get paid to do this.
Mm-hmm.
You get laid off. The other thing I want to highlight is we're in a time now, especially as the post-COVID and things have started to come down, like a lot of layoffs, especially in the tech industry. Currently as we speak. Someone watching this might see it, and it's like sometimes you don't realize how the situation, even though you don't appreciate it in a moment, is setting you up for the next opportunity, for a rebirth, if you will. A new birth to something that you didn't necessarily even anticipate, but it gives you the opportunity to pursue in a way that you didn't necessarily have the same freedom.
Right.
And we're in a place now where a lot of people are going through something similar. So I want to just highlight that, like, these unfortunate circumstances can turn into that diamond in the rough. That was the thing that potentially turned everything around, because it made you uncomfortable and it forced you to do something a little different.
That's right. That's right.
And so
it's not even a question about, as far as I look at, like, especially when I got laid off, to be, in all honesty, man, I was kind of ready to leave that job anyway, but I was holding on, what I mean? It was stressful. That's stressful work, man, dealing with multi-million-dollar companies, and they losing money because their networks are down, and it's your job to fix it. You know what I'm saying? And you're like, ugh, especially when things are out of your control. And that's what frustrated me as well. The universe was saying, okay, now it's your time to do what you really want to do, when I got laid off. And that's how I look at it. And I ain't looked back since.
So being an artist is one thing. Being a business person is different.
Indeed.
And so as an entrepreneur, knowing how to prospect, knowing how to generate demand, leads, interests, like clientele, every photographer doesn't have a client base, right? Like,
right.
And the price point for your client base, it's like there's a method, there's a model to that. I'm curious to know, like, there's an artist, but then there's a business person. How did you originally approach photography as a business person, just for people out there listening?
Yeah, I think that was probably one of the more challenging things when it came to being an artist who wanted to actually earn a living doing my art. You know what I'm saying? Because there weren't, especially 15 years ago, there weren't that many resources available unless you shot weddings. I think the wedding photography industry and the wedding industry is like a whole thing. And there were tons of tutorials and how to market yourself, but I didn't want to do that. And when I say I didn't want to do that, I wasn't mad at shooting weddings, because I shot weddings for 10 years. But there was a certain way they presented themselves where I didn't see myself reflected in it. So thankfully, I drew inspiration from other artists who were in fashion, who were using photography and using culture and our culture as a way to tell story. A lot of old heads might not remember the street etiquette, out of New York. They were from the Bronx, the Brooklyn Circus. That's a clothing brand by my man Ouija in Brooklyn as well. These were cats who were they kind of changed the tone of the Black aesthetic. And for me, as a Black man from New York, living in the South, who still maintained a certain aesthetic that revolved around the art scenes in New York and a lot of hot spots around the country and world, for that matter. I looked at those guys as inspiration. You know what I mean? Like, whatever they were doing spoke to me. So I wanted to kind of reflect that energy when people saw my work, and that made me come up with the style, creativity, and soul aspect of my business. I wanted people to think of those three things. If they see anything going out in the universe from me and my company, it needs to reflect any one of those three things that I mentioned. And if it doesn't, then that's not a part of my brand. That's not what I want to do. So it was real simple for me. I just want to talk to people who like shit I like,
But how do you find those people? Because, like, as a business, like, because I think a lot of artists struggle. I think there's a lot of, like, it's a lot of dope artists out here, and
a lot.
It's so many dope artists out here, but not everyone has the ability to take their art and make it a business.
Yeah, it's a challenge, man. It's hard. I mean, there are so many formulas out there and textbook ways, but for me, I think it's a combination of a lot of things. And when I've read Malcolm McDowell's, no, sorry, not McDowell, Malcolm Gladwell's book, The Outliers, for example, right? Highly recommended book for people who like when they talk about success, right? They talk about the math genius who wound up being homeless versus the guy who was not the best at math, but he had social skills and was able to network and build relationships and friendships with people who could help him get to the next level. I think it's a combination of all of that. You can't just be good at what you do and think you're going to, be successful. You have to have a balanced outlook when it comes to your presentation and your outlook on life and how you deal with people and how people perceive you, and this is something that is a constant lifelong journey for a lot of entrepreneurs and business people I know. Some people are successful at certain things, and then some people who are great at what they're trying to do, they're not getting any traction. So that's where the timing thing comes in also, because I think, for example, being in the Triangle area and being in the arts and being able to kind of establish somewhat of a footprint during a time when people were needing the services that I had and maybe aligning with the vision I had for the work I wanted to produce was a godsend. You know what I mean? Like I started doing work and then the article showed up, so all of a sudden, artists who normally wouldn't come to Durham were here, and we all felt like we spoke the same language aesthetically, and kind of like using that as a platform to kind of help develop more work, build more relationships. So I don't know if there's any formula. I know there's a lot of business coaches out there who have these formulas and things that this is what you need to do step by step by step. And then, I don't think there's any guarantee to any of that work. And I think it's a bit of a skill, talent, people skills, soft skills, and luck and timing. You know what I mean? And look, I'm not a millionaire by any means, but I've been blessed to be able to say that I've been still doing business for 15 years and working with cool ass people like yourself, bro. You know what I mean? It's like just doing my thing out here, bro.
You work with hella more cool niggas than me. I don't even gotta go through that. I mean, to be frank,
it's
like people that inspired me, frankly, as an artist. You know what I mean? I the Minstrel Show is one of my favorite pieces of work of all time, right? And the fact that you've worked with those gentlemen is just
yeah. I mean, so that kind of respect. I appreciate that, man. But it's like the irony of that, and this kind of segues into like music, right? Because when I first got out the service, but I was still kind of dabbling my toes. I was always a music head, honestly. I played instruments, so I grew up playing the guitar, taught myself how to play the drums, play by ear keys.
Like what age we talking? Like early age?
Older age? I was like maybe 8 when I started playing the guitar up until like maybe high school. But being surrounded by music, my dad had thousands of records. He was always playing. We had music playing in our house constantly in our kitchen. You know what I'm saying? We just had a little transistor radio in the cupboard, and we just had it playing the jazz station. You know what I mean? So that influenced me a lot. Fast forward, like living in North Carolina, and not really understand the music scene here outside of, in much respect to the brother P.D. Pablo, you know what I'm saying? I didn't have any other perspective of what North Carolina hip hop sounded like outside of, wave your shirt in the air, like, you know what I'm saying? And
right.
So when I first started, heard, Little Brother and other artists from this area making music that resonated with me because it sounded like what I listened to in New York.
Right.
Because they were influenced by the same artists that I listened to up there. You know what I mean? It was like, oh wow,
that sound is definitely
It's a very, what they call it, boom bap. I don't like to label stuff, but that's what, it's just had a certain
sample boom bap.
It had a soulful element to it that really I felt it.
Minstrel Show is just like
that's probably my favorite Little Brother record.
It's like, we just gotta like, Minstrel Show, like if anybody listening don't know, like, man, like that joint right there, man. That came on my freshman year of college. That was like, it was crazy. It was like late registration, Minstrel Show, and like Thug Motivation 101, Jeezy, like all in the same time span. It was just a crazy Wayne Carter 2. Or was it Carter?
Yep.
No, Carter 2.
I think it was Carter 2.
Carter 2. All that time was just, oh my gosh.
It was a golden era, man. It was like almost a renaissance period for a lot of hip hop heads because there was so many different styles coming out around the same time. They were like spanning the country. You know what I'm saying? Because I grew up in an era where you only heard regional music depending on what state you went to. You know what I mean? You didn't hear New York music in LA. You didn't hear LA music in New York. And then Radio 1 and Clear Channel showed up, and all of a sudden they're doing national playlists where you're hearing different types of music and it's the same playlist across the country.
Right.
So
Right.
hearing music that resonated with me and being able to listen to it and listen to only that, and then the internet, you know what I'm saying? And back then it was LimeWire and downloading mixtapes from producers who turned out, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah,
and then
that
putting
was an
viruses on my
era.
computer. Yeah, I went through all of that, man. And so anyway, fast forward to like be working with cats is definitely something that's humbling, man. I don't take any of that for granted, man. It's a blessing to be able to like sit down and chop it up with Knife, or sit down and chop it up with Pooh. You know what I'm saying? Or be
Legends
in a
man.
room doing photography for the foreign exchange project or doing their artwork and stuff, man. I mean, I don't, it's crazy, man. Like, it's
No
like
question.
full circle, bro. Full circle.
No question, man. And so like you have a musical ear, you produce from photography to the production side. Like when did you actually produce for an artist? Like when did you really start like focusing more on that aspect of your creative side?
I would say it was as soon as like around the time I got out the military, I wound up linking up with some homies who were starting an independent record label. Once again, it's one of those things where it just felt natural and organic to like start learning and understanding the more technical aspects of making music. And they gave me an opportunity to start producing for artists they had on their roster, man. And a lot of the artists were from South Carolina. So, but I'm a New York dude. I didn't know how to make like trap music or whatever music sounded like in the South in the early 2000s.
Right.
I knew what I liked, you know what I mean? And we had artists that sang. We had rappers, so we kind of came up with the idea, okay, well, let's do these type of beats that I do and shop them to these artists who are, air quotes, Southern artists who might not necessarily rock on that. And it actually worked, you know what I'm saying? It worked out to where I was able to get some traction, by sticking to my formula of the music that I liked, producing it, hearing it flesh out. Going to the studio. This is back in the day when everybody didn't have Pro Tools or Logic on their computers. We had to go to a studio until one of us was able to afford to buy, a Pro Tools license to actually record in my man's living room. You know what I mean? Like I've been there. So anyway, that was the first time where it dawned on me that I might be able to do this some more. But then I stopped doing it for years until a few years ago.
And so like musically, how would you might describe your sound musically?
I gravitate towards I call it like soulful boom bap, if that makes sense. I mean, boom bap typically is kind of already classified as somewhat soulful, but for me, I ain't gonna lie, I like relaxing music, man. So, I like music that I can chill to, like music that's kind of multifaceted. I could be able to have a nice drive with it, or I can clean the house with it. I can maybe work out to it, but it always has those boom bap elements. There's going to be some slapping drums. There's going to be some type of melody, be it a sample or something played. So I would call it melodic boom bap, with a little bit of an alternative thrown in there.
Okay.
Probably my thing, man.
You got any new joints that people could listen to recently? Any new, like whether it be music, also like from a visual standpoint, like just what are you working on most recently, both visually and from an audio standpoint, sonically?
Yeah. Visually, I'm working on a lot of things, man. I work with so many different types of clients, so it's kind of hard to like highlight one. But linked up with a really good brother, Tristan Andre. He's an amazing artist, visual artist, singer, dancer, composer, and he's doing an interpretation of a James Baldwin work called "They Don't Know Harlem." And anyway, I'm documenting that process, that journey, doing interviews, and this is going to be photography and film. On the music side, my brother Preach Jacob, we finally released an album, kind of like his coming out of, not I don't say coming out of retirement, but anyway, we're promoting this album. This came out a few days ago, the 24th. So we've been.
What's the name of that joint?
The record is called Frances, Frances, and it's dedicated to his late grandmother. And I produced several tracks on that album, as well as like Tall Black Guy, who a lot of people who know music and beats know. Doug Infinite produced a couple tracks on that joint. We have guest rappers like Sky Zoo, amazing wordsmith. We got Georgia Ammo Dro on another track that I produced. So that's the latest musical endeavor that we've put out, and we have the vinyl release as well as the digital releases out. So
let me ask you a quick question. If there's one joint on there that you could play a snippet of for people to listen to, like what would be maybe the one joint? And if you produced it, wouldn't blame you for mentioning that one.
Yeah, definitely, man. I would say the opening track, The Love, Part 1 and 2, fantastic. Yeah, so this beat has a change up. So the first part is produced by the artist, and then the second part is produced by me. So it's like it changes up halfway through, But
I'm just gonna play that in the background right here.
Yeah, let it run, bro. Let it run. But yeah, definitely, I love that song. I'm glad that like the sequencing, he sequenced the record, man. I think that was a great choice to open the record up.
Yeah, I was listening to this joint earlier, and it's a nice vibe on here for sure. I was letting it run while I was prepping for the episode and everything.
Yeah.
And this was a standout, even though it's the intro, right? It was one of the more memorable joints. This one in particular to me.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad. I'm glad, but it's interesting you mentioned that. Let me just turn up for people real quick.
Yeah, man, let him ride to it, man. You got to get to the beat changes though, man, because I think I put my foot in that second half of the song too, man. I ain't gonna front.
Who's on this first half?
That's Preach. The artist did this beat, this first half.
Okay.
Yeah, he did this
beat. Shout out to
then,
Preach Jacobs.
Yeah, man, he did his thing, man. And then I flipped it for the second half of the song and kind of changed the whole vibe of it. You know what I mean?
Bet.
When you on the quest to be the best, lose part of what you once was. In the process, you lose niggas that you once loved. Still it's one love, so I raise a glass and salute. Picture perfect, every day's another photo shoot. I love it. I love it, I love it. You say you like it, I love it, I love it, I love it, I love it. I love it, I love it. You say you like it, I love it, I love it. Listen, I'm a bad man. Wanna see what that brain's like. Give her CAT scan. Hard cold, it's the last scan. Old school like cassette tapes and the task scam. Didn't know how to mix and master, but still I missed the chatter. We had a big dreams and all them dreams seem shattered. What's worse, somebody that's still hoping, or seeing a nigga whose soul's broken? I've been in both of them, still not far removed from both of them. I see dudes that make bad moves and still see myself in most of them. Still in friends that hate my guts, still feeling close to them. Carolina's where I'm from, for better or worse. Not sure if it's a blessing or curse. Before you eat that food, put that blessing on it first. Go to my homie's crib, he got that dresser with that work. I ain't judging, just want something bigger. It's not how you start, but how you end, like how you say nigga. Probably call me the one with that hard ER. Kill whole crews, whole squad ended ERs. Cause like an alcoholic, all I care about is bars. It's my time, that's why I'm past waiting. Cause the pen saved my life, that's no exaggeration. It's my time to ball like a cancer patient. Wanna make my mom and pops proud, cause they seen us struggle. Master the hustle, work it out, see that muscle, I love it.
Word up.
I love it, I love it, I love it.
All this right here when it transition, it's you right here?
Yeah.
See, I appreciate this right here on the end, because we don't do this no more with music.
Right. You gotta let it breathe sometimes, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, man.
You just gotta let it breathe, man.
Need the vibes.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how you feel.
I'm not taking no talk back. You see me blink yet?
Yeah, but also, you know, just supporting the homie, man. I mean, I think this is some of his best work lyrically as well, man. So it's I love that process of being able to be inspired, but also inspire someone to kind of stretch a little bit artistically, you know, and that's what I think a lot of my music stuff is about, like stretching myself, but also being self-conscious, man. You know, it took me a while to start putting music out because it's kind of hard when you work with Grammy nominated, Grammy winning artists, as you know, in another platform. But then, oh yeah, by the way, I do beats. You know what I'm saying? Like they hear that a lot. They hear that a lot. Here's my tape. You know, here's my CD, or here's a link to my SoundCloud or whatever. I didn't want to be that dude. I just wanted to like get to a point where I felt like whatever the mix, the you know playlist that I had that I listen to on a frequent basis. If I could put one of my tracks in the midst of that, then I know I'm on the right path. you know, and being a photographer who can't shoot without having music playing, you know, and having, you know, really talented people with great taste and great aesthetic, you know, hearing my music in the midst of a random playlist with other well-known artists, and they don't skip a beat, or they don't like, nah, that's trash, keep moving, or they'll ask you, who is that? And I'm like, oh, that was me. You know what I'm saying? It's like, that's what I do. I don't really, it's just about being humble, man, and knowing when you're ready. Sometimes not thinking you're ready, but still jumping out the window with it, you know? So I think artists really sometimes just got to jump out the window with it and just put it out there. Somebody's going to f with it. Somebody out there going to f with your work. You know what I mean? So that's what I learned with music most recently.
Yo, man, I know we're going to start to close out here, man. Like, I really appreciate the time, this opportunity just to sit down, learn a little bit about your background that I don't know. Like, I don't know if people know all of that about you, honestly. I have to say, like, you know, just hearing a different side. And what I like to say here before I give you the final word here, before we close it out, just one thing I'm curious, just in thinking through this, like your background as a sergeant in the context of a military versus how you are now running your own business and using those same skills and leadership to manage your own entrepreneurial efforts. Like, I gotta imagine those things complement one another. People have journeys. You just never know what you're going through in one moment and how that prepares you, how that's preparing you for something you don't even foresee. And like, if I just, you know, really think about your story, and I think about when we met in 2013 and where you are today, like, I can't do anything but highlight like the growth. Like, you were doing weddings, and then all of a sudden you were doing like album art, and then you started doing videos, and then you started doing like other. It's like the scalability of what you've been able to do as an artist is not easy, and the fact that you've done it here in this area and managed to, you know, frankly, put a chokehold on it. Like, you are, in my opinion, one of the go-tos for a quality aesthetic in the Triangle, if not the Southeast. Okay.
I appreciate that, bro. Thank you.
And
man.
I'm just honored that you were willing to work with me in multiple capacities and able to get on here and share the story, man. And frankly, who knows what the future holds, but an artist like yourself, I want people to see this, like, there's art, there's business, and then there's the willingness to put it all together. And they're all separate. So like that drive, that determination, you've demonstrated that, and that is just to be highlighted and celebrated. If there's anything to leave the audience with, just from your point of view, with final words here, if there's anything to leave the audience with, I think my Wi-Fi is getting a little shaky, but we're good to go. If there's anything that you can leave the audience with, what would those final words be?
You know, I would definitely say, as someone who considers himself a polymath, I just like so many things. I enjoy so many things. You can do one thing and have a business and do multiple things within that business. But that's one thing I would leave y'all with. Don't limit yourself as artists. If you're a photographer who likes to paint, well, maybe, you know, try to incorporate the two, make a multimedia project. You know what I'm saying? If you're a photographer or a painter who likes to do music, okay, we'll combine them both, or combine them all three things. Don't limit yourself as a creative. You know, you can do all the things. You know, don't make people think that you can't. You can do all the things, but also get good mentorship and understand business in general, because a lot of the skill sets, regardless of what your trade is or your craft, they all translate, and they all revolve around understanding the human essence, the human spirit, understanding
the human essence.
You know what I'm saying? Understanding how to, you know, I hate saying deal with people, because that gives it a negative connotation. Like, being able to work with so many different types of people is something that is a skill set, you know. And I've been blessed to work with
highly valuable in today's world.
So be flexible and always be willing to learn something new, because it keeps the brain sharp.
Man, that's great advice.
I'm trying to learn how to play the flugelhorn now, man. I wish my brother Al Strong gave me some lessons, but I'm just stuck with YouTube and this flugelhorn. But I want to play. You know what I'm saying? Because I want to add the horns into my tracks, and I don't want to sample it. I want to play it myself, because why not?
Yeah, why not? Because why not?
Yeah.
That's the right mindset, because why not? Yo, man, it's been a pleasure. For those of y'all who are on the live, for those of y'all who are able to watch this afterward, I greatly appreciate you tuning in. This episode of the G Shit Podcast features Chris Charles. If you want to get to know a little bit more about him, do you mind shouting out your social media so they know where to follow you and keep up with your work?
Yeah, for sure. Well, my main website is chrischarles.co. That's chrischarles.co, not com, not .com. It's .co. But I'm on Instagram. It's so THE_symbol Chris Charles. That's _Chris Charles. I'm on Facebook, Chris Charles Photo. That's my business page. Twitter is Photo Ninja 357. So yeah,
I'm gonna make sure I put those links in the description so the future listeners get an opportunity to catch up with you, no doubt.
Dope. Yeah, reach out for all your visual needs. If you need some music, holler at me. If you just need some mentorship, because I mentored a lot of really amazing artists in the area, and I enjoy that as well because I didn't have that guidance. So if anybody needs some mentorship, needs some advice about how to navigate through this art world, holler at me. And I'm on the board of directors for the Art Guild as well, so I might be able to do something if I need to.
And I just gotta say this, he's not lying. He's a great person to work with. He's always been open to working with me in particular, my wife. He's done a lot of work with her, some of her business needs, taking pictures and design and things of that nature. So I can't speak highly enough about Chris Charles, his aesthetic, his brand, and what he adds in terms of value. Instead of riding out with the typical G shit intro, we gonna ride out with Fantastic, man. We gonna ride out with Fantastic.
Word up.
Produced by the one and only right here.
Yo, high power, the mic's power. Sleeping the day, and then the night's
This is the G Podcast. Make sure you subscribe, hit that like button, follow at G Shish Pod. Ha!
Use it to keep them blind.
I'm not taking no talk back. See me blink yet?
I want the scully like a winter hat. Picture that. Why you arguing who's the best, this and that? Forever bring the heat like where December at. Leave the mic alone, stick the crack. Well done, like your cookie sticks wrong. It didn't take wrong, cause bitches love me like a Drake song. It's fantastic. It's fantastic. It's fantastic. Fantastic like a Dilla record. Chess moves, never deal with checkers. Aim high, feel the pressure. Get off my block like a rim protector. Above y'all so high, can't pretend to measure. Not on my level, but commend the effort. Carolina's equivalent to Babylon. With my respects worth a trill, similar to Amazon. Just move like a vagabond. Missy with the bull like a matador. If you ain't trying to inspire, what you rapping for?
It doesn't matter how you feel.
Like me, strong neck, wanna hold the crown just like me. Welcome to 30 plus when you invited out. Concerned with spending $30, rather be home watching Hulu with dirty nuts. I love this. You don't want smoke like smudge sticks. Never was the hardest nigga, but still son these MCs like a father figure. Cause your real father didn't bother with you. Shut. It's fantastic. It's fantastic. It's fantastic.
So we made an extended version to let the beat ride out. So cats, if they wanted to jump on it, but yeah, it's gonna ride the beat out for another minute and a half or so, man. But
no doubt, man. You already know what it is, man. Shout out to Preach Jacobs. Francis, out now, everywhere you stream. Heard a couple of joints today. Man, once again, shout out to the homie Chris for joining me here on the G Shit Pod. This is the G Shit Podcast where we focus on family, friends, finances, freedom, and our future, and everything else. I appreciate y'all listening. Make sure you listen to the next one. Ha!
Taking no talk back. You see me blink yet?
Ha!
yes, sir.